Welcome to the RetroWolf podcast. And today's guest is someone that I recently discovered on YouTube and Twitch. And since I discovered her, I've absolutely loved her content, been watching it a lot, checking out some of her live streams. And that is Bex, aka Trista Bytes. How are you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Just got off work, so can't complain. All right. So Bex, if you don't mind, if you could go ahead and just kind of tell my audience a little bit about yourself and what your YouTube channel is all about and what your Twitch streams are all about.
Yeah, I guess the easiest way to explain things is that I talk about geek stuff and I never shut up. So it made a lot of sense to just stick a camera in front of that and call it a career. So I do a bunch of different things. I've been on YouTube for over 6 years now, doing stuff from, I did some movie reviews, I did some event reports, I filmed my adventures when I went out to Tokyo and went around all the retro gaming shops and things like that. I do a load of interviews with indie games developers, indie comic book developers and things like that. And after a while, people just relentlessly shouted at me until I joined Twitch. So I've been on Twitch for, we're coming up for 2 years now, I think, nice. On Twitch. And that's kind of slowly, obviously with everything happening over the last year or so, where I'd moved to doing more stage presentation work and doing sort of panels and stuff like that, hosting panels for things like MCM Comic Con and EGX gaming conventions, which are the big ones here in the UK. Suddenly those all stopped quite abruptly. And I'd been doing 2 evenings a week on Twitch and really loving it. And that just basically kind of took over all my free time. And it's been good fun. It's been a journey. Oh, yeah. And it's been amazing to kind of just that the community on Twitch has just been phenomenal. So that it's just some of me ranting about who's the best Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, which I sometimes called Hero Turtle just to troll anyone from the States.
Right, yeah.
Because we were called Hero Turtles over here, just in case we got any ideas from the word ninja and started hitting our siblets with nunchucks. We play some retro games, we play some indie stuff. I build Star Wars Lego on some of them. Oh, nice. And I started doing more improv comedy, like interactive improv comedy with characters where chat are part of the comedy skits and stuff like that. And it's just been cool. It's been fun. It's been a really good learning experience. And that is basically now my entire life.
Very nice. Very nice. Nothing wrong with that at all. And I like 2 things you said, right? One thing that you said that I like is the community. I haven't started Twitch yet. I do some live streams on YouTube, and I plan on making the transition to Twitch. But I was doing a live stream on YouTube the other day, and this guy came into my stream that streams a lot on Twitch, and he has several thousand followers, and couldn't be any nicer. He was, basically telling me, hey man, you should come over to Twitch. I'll help you out. Any questions you have, I can get you in the community. And so, yeah, I've already seen some of the awesomeness of the Twitch community firsthand. So yeah, totally agree there.
Yeah, they're wonderful people. Like there's just such a strong community feel, and I've made some incredible friends from Twitch streaming who've helped show me the ropes, and then when I've known other people who are just joining, I'm then showing them the ropes. And everyone, like if you go to someone's stream and you get to know them and then you message them and go like, how'd you do this thing? People are like, here's how you do the thing, here's where I found the tutorial on how to do the thing. And it just has a very good kind of sharing feel. Plus the community aspect is obviously really big on the charity side as well. So my community last year raised £10,000 for charity.
Wow.
Which was insane. I spent the whole of Christmas Day and New Year's and stuff doing long charity streams. I cooked Christmas dinner on camera, and anyone that's known me for more than 10 seconds know I shouldn't be let near a cooker, knives, scissors, hot things. And I had to do that all in a highly flammable unicorn onesie. Because charity.
Yeah, right.
And there is that really strong sort of charity fundraising element to Twitch as well. You'll see things come around each year. We just had one called Game Blast, which is for a charity called Special Effect, who make custom gaming controllers and computer input devices for kids and adults with severe disabilities so that they can join in. Yeah. And that got up to, it was something like £200,000 between everyone that was streaming for it.
That's amazing.
Seeing everybody, they'll raid each other's streams, they'll drop in on each other's streams, and everybody celebrating everyone else's success. And that, I think, is one of the differences I see between my time on YouTube
Yeah.
And I like YouTube for putting up interviews, for putting up static content.
Mm-hmm.
But for the other stuff, Twitch just has a really different vibe, and it's really good fun.
Yeah, no, totally. And you know, that's the way it should be. Everybody just kind of coming together and helping each other out. I mean, it shouldn't be like people looking at other streamers or other YouTubers as competitors. We should look at each other as part of a community and help build each other up, because that will benefit everybody. So I love to hear that. Another thing that you said that I like is, in your streams in particular, you have a nice bit of variety in your streams, because a lot of Twitch streamers, and there's nothing wrong with this, but a lot of Twitch streamers I see, you know, they only play games on Twitch, and that's fine. But I like that you have a lot of variety in your content with the Lego builds and the comedy and the improv, because I mean, what they say, variety is the spice of life, right?
I think I'd go mad if I just did the same thing day in, day out. And I know some people that do primarily the same type of content. You know, they're like, maybe they're a speed runner, so their passion is to know every square centimeter of a particular game, and getting that deep dive into that game and playing the same game 100 times is what their passion is. But for me personally, I think I would have gone slowly lost it if I just played the one thing. And I guess as well, I was just trying ideas out to see what people wanted, and because I do particular things on particular days, people know what day there'll be what type of content. So I guess I'm running it a bit more like a TV channel, but one where there's like no budget for more than one person. I'm just all the different shows, hence like silly accessories and Photoshop backgrounds and things like that, just to make it appear like, you know, there's more than one of me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think if I make the transition to Twitch, I'll probably do the same thing, like not the exact same content that you're doing, but what I mean, I'll do like a variety of different things. I don't think I'll just stream games. I've kind of thought about the idea of like editing a YouTube video live on Twitch and letting people see how a video is edited and just kind of chat with people while editing a video. I think that could be pretty fun.
Yeah, people love that kind of stuff. A lot of
yeah.
the streamers I watch are artists and creators, because I love seeing how stuff's made. People painting Warhammer miniatures. I love watching that as well and talking to them, because it's just like the level of skill involved and watching that magic kind of happen. And they're just lovely communities for that as well. Twitch isn't just gaming in any way, shape or form. It was kind of one of the core things that built the platform, but it's by no means the majority of the content nowadays.
Yeah, and that's great. That's great. More variety is great. So, and real quick before we get into topics, everybody, I will leave links to all of Bex's content in the description down below. So YouTube channel, the Twitch channel, her social media, that will all be in the description down below. I highly encourage you all to check out all of that and follow her, because she's an awesome YouTuber, awesome Twitch streamer, and I guarantee you that you will enjoy the content. So before we get into the rest of the topics and questions, one thing that I like to ask everybody that I get on the show is, what games have you been playing recently?
I am playing Chrono Trigger as my main thing at the moment. So yeah, the sort of retro game Tuesday ones we're doing Chrono Trigger, and it's my first playthrough because that game was not released in the UK at the time. Which is absolutely gutting. However, I am playing the Steam version of it, which has the Akira Toriyama fully animated, like anime style sequences added in. So but it has the option to play it with the SNES graphics. So it's like the best of both worlds. So that's been good fun. I foolishly, or as a stroke of genius, depending on your opinion, let my viewers name all of the characters and make all major plot point decisions.
Oh, no.
So our heroes are called Idiot.
Nice.
Velma, Crichton, Kermit. you get the kind of general gist. Idiot has been working incredibly well though, because literally everywhere I go, there's just like an NPC will just go, "Idiot, where are you going?" And I'm like, I have no clue. I'm as lost as you are, mate. So that's been good fun. And the other thing that I've been playing recently, but not streaming, is I play quite a lot of Beat Saber.
Oh, I love that game. Beat Saber is so much fun, and it's a good workout too if you play on higher difficulties.
I love like rhythm games. I always have. I was a big fan of DDR back in the day. I own a metal dance pad. And last time I went to Tokyo, I discovered a game called Mai, which is, it's often called the washing machine game because it looks like a bank of washing machines.
Really?
But it's got a circular touch screen and buttons around the edges, and you have to press the buttons and do patterns on the screen. And it's super like relaxing, but also high energy because that's how rhythm games kind of work for my brain.
Yeah.
So I've been playing a bunch of that. And what was the last thing I was playing as well? Oh yes, the forfeit games for the last charity stream was that I had to play all the Echo the Dolphin games on the Mega Drive. Yeah, which was they chose this is, again, don't let your viewers choose the forfeits or you will end up wearing a unicorn onesie playing Echo the Dolphin to a chorus of the Sonic drowning sound effect every time someone donated to charity.
Oh no.
Every single donation, or they'd use a scream jump scare. So every time someone donated, I'd be like, I hate you, thank you for the donation. So that I hope I never have to play those games again.
It's awesome. I have to ask you real quick about Beat Saber. Maybe it's just me, but when you play a level on a higher difficulty and you do really good, do you feel like a ninja badass, or is it just me?
I feel like that all the time. So then I just feel like a ninja badass with lightsabers. So yeah. And I've done some lightsaber training in real life, so it's just transferring my skills to the digital world. You know, I hit less things by accident in Beat Saber too.
Very nice, very nice. So what's the story behind the name Trista Bytes? I always like to ask people about their YouTube or Twitch names because sometimes there's an interesting story behind it. So what's the story behind yours? I
thought I was being clever and funny, and I wasn't. It's kind of the the short version of it. Trista's the surname, so I thought Bex was too common. Trista kind of sounds, a bit more interesting. Yeah. And then my original idea was to make bite-size content, and I thought Trista Bytes sounded a bit like, bites, like vampire-y and bite-sized content. And as someone who spent the previous career working in like graphic design and marketing, I should have realized that this was going to mean everything I went on from this point. Every podcast that didn't have a video, I always had to say Trista Bytes spelled B-Y-T-E-S because I thought I was funny. And I was just like, how have I made such a rookie mistake? And also means that 50% of people call me Trista rather than Bex, which I don't mind at all. But that's using your surname as your channel name. So
hey, you know what?
I keep considering changing it, but it's been 6 years now. Like,
hey, listen, I like it. I think it's clever, and it works. So
I appreciate you lying.
No, I'm serious. It's a hell of a lot more clever than my YouTube channel name. I mean, let's be honest. There's no originality in my YouTube channel name. It's Retro because I love retro games. Wolf because that's my last name. And 88 because that's the year I was born. So there's literally nothing clever about that.
But I tell you what, I bet everyone can spell it.
Everyone can spell it.
I get called Trisha. I get bites as in the way, the other kind of bites. Like, I did not make my life easy. So for branding purposes, you've won.
Oh, well, hey. So what inspired you to start the YouTube channel?
Originally, it was kind of a confidence building exercise. When I was a kid, I'd always wanted to do stand-up comedy and acting and radio presenting and stuff like that. And I never had the confidence to actually do any of those things. And as I got older, I kind of got to a point where I was just a little bit sick of not doing some of these things I really wanted to do. And my original plan was to just learn how to present to camera because I'd done some presenting work before. As a graphic designer, I'd done various, business meetings and client proposals and training sessions for junior staff and this kind of thing. And I wanted to learn how to do more casual style presenting, more talkative and things like that. And I just thought, well, I'll learn. I'll figure out how to film, I'll figure out how to edit, I'll figure out how to light things and do sound, and I'll make a couple of videos, and then I'll see if I can use that as a show reel to get some work. And it just kind of kept going. Yeah. It wasn't supposed to be an actual channel in the way it is now. Gotcha. But after I did the first few videos, it made sense to me to start taking the camera to the Comic-Cons I went to. And then when I was at the Comic-Cons, I thought, well, there's amazing indie comic book artists and writers here.
Yeah.
And unless you happen to stumble across them, you might never find these. And they're putting all this hard work in, and the stuff's incredible. So it makes sense for me to practice learning my skills by sharing their skills. And I might not make many views on my YouTube channel because it was tiny at the time, but those, you know, if you know 300, 400, 500 people watch that video and 10 of them buy that comic book, that means something to those comic book creators. So I thought I'll do that. It will help them a little bit. It's a good way for me to practice, and now I'm still doing it, so I've had to accept I'm a YouTuber.
Well, hey, listen, your content's very good. And one thing that I like to do when I discover any new YouTube channel, I like to go back to the beginning and watch some of the first content, because it's actually really fascinating to see.
My first ever video is on there. Yeah.
It's well, you go ahead. What is your first video about?
The first video I did was about Star Wars. It was The Force Awakens, wasn't it? And it took me several hours to film that, because I literally had like 10-20 minute sections of me just sat there like this, and it took a solid week to edit, and it's about 5 minutes long. And it wasn't even going to go on YouTube. It was just the practice video, and because I spent a solid week editing it, I was just like, I'm just putting it up anyway. I'm just putting it up anyway. What's the point in deleting this at this point? And I was like, maybe one day I'll look back at this and realize I've got so much better. And I look back at it now and go like, I don't think it's as bad as I thought it was, but also I'm not convinced I'm as much better as I thought I would be. But if I were to make that first video again now, it would take me, you know, only like a day or something to do like what was like over a week's worth of work then. So I've got more efficient.
Efficiency is definitely important when doing YouTube, no doubt about it. But yeah, I mean, what I've seen, you know, I watched some of your early videos, I watched some of your middle videos, and I watched some of your newer stuff, and I definitely see just a large increase in both your on-screen presence, production values, just the whole 9 yards. So I mean, I think you've got this thing nailed. I think you got it down.
Thank you.
Yeah. And one thing you mentioned earlier that I really like, you said that, you know, one of the reasons why you started doing YouTube videos is to build confidence. And I think that's a really good thing to bring up, because that's also one of the reasons why I started doing YouTube, is a sort of a confidence builder, you know, because being in front of a camera, when you first start doing it, at least for most people, is it's very nerve-wracking. You know what I mean? It's like it's tough. It's tough. It takes a while to get used to it, but I've found, and I'm sure you've found the same, that through doing this, making these videos, being in front of a camera on a regular basis, it really does do a lot to build confidence. And also, at least for me, makes it easier for me to talk in groups or in front of a lot of people. Makes it a lot easier. Has that kind of been your experience as well?
I had sort of gotten used to talking in front of a live audience to a certain degree, although it was a different kind of audience through the stuff I was doing with work. But I found the camera really intimidating because there's no feedback. That's true. And that was kind of the big thing for me, was that you couldn't see if a joke landed. No one would, you wouldn't find out for months if somebody thought your joke was funny or not. And that was quite a difficult one for me. And my Raichu, which is up here, I started sitting that on top of the camera. So Raichu is the director. And I found that silly things like that helped me, because then I had a face to look at, and it's a smiling face. Look at it, it's so cute. And so I did things like that because I was used to being able to see my audience. And then I had the weird thing again from sort of like getting used to YouTube and then not being anything there and getting to edit stuff, to then the weird halfway house, which is Twitch, because Twitch is all, you can't edit it if you say something wrong tough with the live audience, but you can't see the live audience, and there's a 20-second delay before their typed responses come back at you. So that was another challenge again, of being like, this is between the two. This is all of the intimidatingness of just having a camera lens looking at you and your own face, you know, on the feed. And none of the being able to see the audience's instant reaction. So that was another Another challenge. My first ever Twitch streams also on YouTube, on a different channel I have, where I just back up my live streams, and I'm like slightly shaking in it. It's yeah, it was a whole nother learning curve, slightly more than I thought it was going to be, to be honest. But it's I think being on Twitch has helped me with everything else. Definitely.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that, because I mean, even though I haven't streamed on Twitch, I have done quite a few streams on YouTube, and I remember my first stream on YouTube, I was so damn nervous. I mean, I was really, really nervous. But I found that over time, as I did more and more of them, you know, just like making videos, it got easier and easier. Confidence started going up. I started feeling like I started, because, you know, when you're nervous, when you're doing something new like that, it's hard to be yourself, at least for me. But I found that over time, as I've gotten, you know, better at it and more confident, I'm able to be myself more on camera. And I think you'll probably agree with this. When you're live streaming, I think it's important to be yourself.
Yeah, it's definitely, unless you are playing a specific character or doing something where the whole point is you're not, then you will be more relaxed if you are, you know, being yourself to the degree we are where we're on camera. I always say, like, it's like work mode, you know, you have work mode, you have in the pub mode, you have at home with your own mode, and there's like a streamer mode, which is like somewhere between some of these different things. But I think people also respond, especially on stuff like Twitch, to something that is a little bit more authentic, and because you just can't be precious when you're on Twitch. Because I used to be worried about getting stuff wrong, and now I literally, there is a command where people can type in and it gives a response, which says, like, the response is just, oh yeah, the thing with the thing with the thing, because I'll be there going, yeah, the thing with the blue alien, you know, the way it was like late 90s and one of the aliens was blue, and the thing, you know, that thing with the thing. And people, that's just now that's funny. It's not something that where I'm going, oh my god, I can't remember the name of Farscape, and now everyone's going to think I know nothing. They're going to suddenly start thinking my film degree is invented because I can't remember the name of a sci-fi show. It's like now they're just kind of like, they just kind of come back with the answer, and I go, yeah, that's the thing. And you're allowed to be human, and I think that's helped me quite a lot with not worrying. And I suspect when I go back to doing on stage presenting, it's going to make that less intimidating, because you've got this slightly better interaction with the audience from Twitch, where it's like, actually, they don't mind if I can't remember something or if I get something wrong. It's more about your intention than necessarily getting everything right. I'm there to be funny and entertaining, not a school teacher, you know. It's not quite the same thing. So yeah, being authentic and just owning those mistakes and rolling with it, it's easier on you, and people respond better, so it's kind of win-win.
That's true. That is true. So you've kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but what inspired you to jump on the Twitch and start live streaming on Twitch?
Just relentlessly told to do it.
That's one way.
I just didn't get a say. My Twitch channel didn't turn into anything like what I thought it was at all. It went in a completely different direction. But yeah, people just independently, a whole bunch of people just would not shut up pestering me, saying, you should be on Twitch, you should be on Twitch, you should be on Twitch. And I was like, eventually I was like, okay, well, I've just spent, at the time, I just spent 5 weeks in Tokyo. And I was like, well, I've got loads of cool stuff to talk about, and I now own a lot more like vintage Game Boys than I used to. So I'll just do a stream where I just kind of go like, bought this. It cost 170 yen. Like, so many things were like 75 pence. It's like under a dollar. From the cheap secondhand shops out there. And I just kind of did a stream where I just kind of thought, right, we'll just start basic, and I'll just talk, and I'll show stuff, and we'll just talk. And I didn't expect that to be what the streams were going to be at all. I didn't expect anyone to show up at all. The first stream, like 60 people showed up, and I was like, hi. Because it was the first time I'd done anything like live that wasn't like an on-stage thing. So my very lovely YouTube viewership had kind of come over to be like, we want to ask you a million questions. And I was like, I'm not quite, I've got a Game Boy, hi. So that was quite good fun, although it was nerve-wracking. And yeah, then just I'm still here. So yeah, that again, I never shut up, put a camera in front of it, pretend it's a career.
And you know, I've only been able to tune into a few of your streams just because for me it's hard to tune into live streams just because I'm so busy all the time. But what live streams of yours I have tuned into, I've found you to be incredibly entertaining. Your energy on camera is through the roof. Like I'm just sitting here, I'm sitting here thinking, I wish she could give me some of her energy because it's really, really impressive. Which is one of the things I'm going to ask you about later. But the next question I have for you, do you have any future like big plans for the YouTube channel or the Twitch channel? Or are you just kind of rolling with it?
Well, originally I planned my entire channel to be a mixed reality VR channel, mostly with like, you know, like Beat Saber and other kind of music type based content. Now, none of that's possible. And I haven't done a single VR stream at all, which makes me think that I can't really plan this because everything I'm doing now is not what I intended to be doing. One of the things that I started doing over the last year because of doing this on a more full-time basis was I'm doing more and more of the improv comedy stuff, more of the characters and the interactive stuff there. And I never had the confidence to do like comedy stuff before, ever. I just didn't at all. And I'm absolutely loving doing that. So that is slowly grown from being the occasional bit piece that was like just 5 minutes here and there to now the Saturday streams are mostly centered around this fictional town of Tristabyle and all the characters that mysteriously look the same but with different accessories. And that kind of keeps growing. So that's the current thing that's expanding at the moment. So I'm just kind of letting it grow organically and get out of hand on its own kind of terms.
Hey, that nothing wrong with that. And you know, it's funny, you know, you mentioned playing characters and stuff. That's something that I had never done until recently. It's probably about 3 or 4 months ago. I did a review on a GameCube game called Dr. Muto, or some people pronounce it Dr. Muto. And it's a 3D platformer where you play as a little mad scientist. So for this video, I decided to do a character for the very first time, and I played a mad scientist in the video. And you know, I had never done that before. I was completely out of my comfort zone, but I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. It was difficult, but it was a lot of fun. And people responded really well to it, which kind of made me want to start dipping my toes into playing different characters a little bit more. Do you have any tips for that?
Just assume you're going to look stupid and own it.
Yep. Right.
That's kind of the thing. If you don't look stupid, you're probably doing it wrong.
That's a good point.
That's kind of what I'm learning. And once you kind of get over that, it gets a lot easier. I went and did improv comedy courses years ago now, which I then was too terrified to use any of the skills I'd learned from. But the stuff they taught me there like has really, really helped, because it was just like they would just put you in exercises, and the first thing you learn with improv comedy is yes and. So if you're doing something and the person says to you, "Here, doctor, you know, the patient is ready," you can't go, "Oh, I'm a gardener," you know, you can't. You have to play with it. And when you start doing that, you know, be that in an instantaneous format with chat viewers, or in a longer format with, like, you know, reactions you're getting to your YouTube videos, or just going, "I want to review this game and what character should it be?" Just think what the answer is. That it could be the most obvious answer sometimes, you know, what is it that just works? Just accept it and just go with that. And if it goes wrong, just go with that. And it makes life a lot easier. And sometimes when things go completely wrong, it looks entirely like that's what you intended it to be, in which case just say yes. Just be like, yes, that's entirely what I was going for.
That's a good point. So let me ask you this. So you've been doing YouTube for a while, you've been doing Twitch for a while. Do you have any tips in general for people that maybe are interested in getting into YouTube or Twitch, or maybe they've already started, but they're very new to it? Do you have any like tips, stuff that you've learned since you've started doing this?
Yeah, the general things I say with these things is make the piece of content, put the piece of content up, and then that piece of content is done. and then look at it and say, what's one thing I would change? What's one thing I would improve? And I do the same thing when I started with Twitch. Literally, I had no overlays, nothing. When I literally, it was just as I am here with you, just talking. The next week, I made an overlay where you could see chat and it had a logo. The next week, I added one more thing, and just look each time and say, what do I need to add? What do I need to improve? What was the thing, one thing that let that last piece of content down?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, there's like 1,000 million things you could learn, and you probably don't need half of them. And some of them are probably awesome, but they just aren't things that you need or aren't things your audience care about. So just put the first thing up, accept it's gonna suck. Put the next thing up and attempt to make it, 1% better, and just keep going. Because whatever you do now, in 10 years time, all of you're going to be better than all of that stuff. So there's no point trying to make the first thing perfect, unless you'd have to have some kind of time machine to possibly know the skills that you're going to need to learn in future. So just incrementally grow it, and just don't worry about it if it's not good to start with, because none of us are.
You know what, I love that advice, because that's pretty much the same exact advice that I give to people. Because if you and first of all, I always tell people, like kind of what you just mentioned is, your first video or your first live stream or whatever creative endeavor it is, your very first thing may not be that good, but you can't let that stop you from doing it. You can't let that stop.
Well, it almost shouldn't be that good, because it's your first thing. If you picked up a guitar and could immediately play every of Slash's solos, then playing a guitar would not be a thing. You're supposed to pick it up and kind of go, how do I play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star? Oh, it's not even in tune. That's how learning works effectively. And I always say to people, if you decide in 6 months' time the earlier videos are too embarrassing, you can just delete them. But personally, I think leaving them there and being able to look back and laugh at the stuff you did and learn from it shows that journey, and people love to see it,
Yeah. Totally agree. And like you said, another thing I always tell people as well, just like you said, is that, you should always look at your content from an unbiased perspective. Don't be biased to yourself. Look at your content and be truthful and honest with yourself, and say, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? What can I do better the next video? Even if it's just a tiny, tiny improvement. Tiny improvements add up over time to something big. And the next thing you know, like you said, 10 years later, or even a month later, a year later, your content may look totally different. You may have just completely changed it in a positive way because of those small improvements. So that's fantastic advice. I love to hear that.
I say the same with technology as well.
Oh yeah.
There's no point, because I've seen people do this, spending thousands and thousands of pounds on stuff. And to a certain degree, I've done this myself, because I intended to just be streaming VR stuff. So I mean, I have actually used the green screen I bought for loads of other stuff, and I've rented it out to other YouTube channels and things. So that was fine. But if I didn't have the intention of also renting my space out to others, I would have bought this giant green screen for nothing, because I intended to do mixed reality VR, So don't spend huge amounts of money to start with, because you might be buying all the wrong stuff. Just work with what you've got. And then go like, okay, the audio has to be, has to be decent as my first priority. Upgrade your microphone first. And you're like, right, okay, I'd look better if I was in more than 420p. Upgrade the camera next. Just do that incrementally as well. I was streaming for over a year before I got a Stream Deck. Now I've got two, but I went for as long as I could without getting it, because I didn't know if I needed it, why I needed it, what I would do with it. Just don't worry about having tons of kit before you figured out what it is you're trying to do.
That is also great advice. I often tell people, if you have a smartphone, you pretty much have everything you need to make a video or even stream. I mean, you can stream with a smartphone.
Decent smartphones, they've got really good cameras on them now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So the barrier to entry nowadays is pretty low, because most people have a smartphone. And then over time, like you said, you can upgrade your equipment and improve it. But it's definitely not a good idea to spend boatloads of money in the beginning when you're first starting out. That's great
Otherwise
advice.
you end up like everybody in January, where they're like, I'm gonna join the gym, and they buy like fancy gym equipment and like pay a year's worth of gym membership, and then they go once and they realize they actually prefer walking the dog, and but just in really expensive yoga pants or something. It's do the thing first, then buy the kit you need, because you don't know what you're going to need. You might end up buying a whole home setup, and then what you actually find out you need 6 months later is a drone and a really good phone on it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So another question I had for you. So one thing, whenever I discover a new YouTuber, I like to kind of look through the comments on some of their videos and see, number one, do they get trolls or assholes in their comments? And number two, if they do, how do they deal with them? And one thing that I noticed about some of your videos is you actually deal with trolls and haters or assholes, wherever you want to call them. You actually deal with them really well. Like, you're super nice to them. And, you know,
they don't like that.
They don't like that. So I wanted to ask you, what tips do you have for people for how to deal with these types of people, whether it's in a YouTube video, comments, or even on a live stream?
First of all, have a massive, enormous list of blocked words.
Yeah,
because there's a whole bunch of stuff which is just straight up trolling, just straight up hateful things. I think I have 300 words banned on my Twitch chat.
Oh, wow.
And some of them are things you wouldn't necessarily expect. But anytime somebody uses something in a way which isn't acceptable, it goes on that list.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you let an element in that is that negative and that toxic, and you think you'd rather have the viewer rather than have a good community, you're making your whole community suffer, and you change the entire tone of everything you do. Yeah. So I work on that premise. But if I ever see anyone commenting and I think it's coming from a place of they're 12 years old, or they're just ignorant or something, or they just don't know how to word something, then I try to give people a chance to talk to them about something. And if it becomes apparent that, they're doing this on purpose, then I just stop engaging. But some people, you know, the fans of things like Star Wars get very, very passionate and het up. Sometimes it just needs to be like a chill moment to have a little talk with people. So I think it's just, you learn to spot what's just someone who thinks they're funny and actually just can't read the room, or someone that just you need to just engage with them and say, this isn't actually okay, maybe it is somewhere else, but that's not what we're going for here, versus just spotting someone that you need to just, like, you know, Harley Quinn style ban hammer.
Yeah, right. Well, listen, I've got to applaud you for how you handle these types of comments, because I was very impressed. I was like, wow, because usually whenever I see how people handle trolls and different things like that, they usually either go on the offensive and go on the attack, which I think is the wrong approach, because that's kind of what a lot of these people want you to do. Or B, they completely ignore them, which, you know, completely ignoring them, that's a viable option as well, depending on, you know, what it is you're dealing with. But yeah, I mean, the way you deal with them is it's very professional, and like you said, you're trying to give them a chance to explain further or counter argument and things of that nature. And that I really like to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think having a good block word list gets rid of the ones that are just straight up, you know, trying to hurt someone with their words, which means the ones that I do see, for the most part, tend to not be that kind of content. So, but it is just a case of, just trying to figure out if it's worth it or not, because sometimes there's a good conversation to be had there, but if people are just screaming expletives or spewing hate, then they want a reaction, and the reaction they want is anger. But if they're not trying to do that and you give them anger, then that doesn't help you either. It isn't going to solve it in either case.
Yeah, that's true. And one thing that I noticed about your videos, and especially your live streams, is that you really seem to be a very positive person. It seems like you like to have a lot of positivity in your videos and in your streams, and not any negativity or toxicity, which is one of the things that I look for personally whenever I'm subscribing to a YouTube channel. If I subscribe to a YouTube channel and they're a very negative person, or their videos are very toxic or full of drama, I end up unsubscribing because I just don't have any time in my life for that kind of stuff. I like to be a very optimistic and positive person because I just feel like you're going to be more mentally healthy if you take that route instead of the pessimistic kind of negative route. But what are some tips that you have for people? Or another question would be, is that just you by nature? You do seem like a very positive person by nature.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, not everyone has bad days.
Oh yeah, of course, no
That's
doubt.
obviously a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I think it is partly just who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just ridiculously chipper a lot of the time, especially when I'm talking about comic books and
Mm-hmm.
movies and computer games and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I also think it's very much that what I want to achieve with my career
Mm-hmm.
is to make people smile for a living. It's one of the reasons why we talk about so much nostalgia and retro
Mm-hmm.
stuff in all the content I do. It's because that just makes people happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of wanted to make a space that was a break from the real world. Yes. To a certain degree. It's something that you have to quite finely balance, because if it's all just constant positivity
Mm-hmm.
all of the time, you start to shut people out that are having a bad time. So I think you have to recognize the difference between supporting
Mm-hmm.
people and trying not to undermine their life experiences by just trying to say they have to be constantly chipper versus not it's difficult to explain it. You just have to balance that kind of thing of, I want to make a positive, fun space, but I acknowledge that the world isn't always positive and fun. Right. So trying not to go into that toxic positivity type area. But I do mostly focus on things just being a nice little escape from everything else. But I know some other streamers who are positive people who do a lot of amount of things which focus on mental health, and they talk about some really heavy stuff, and they there is for support people going through some really difficult times, and they're kind of doing the opposite bit of the positivity stuff to what I'm doing. I acknowledge all those things and I try and be supportive, but I'm a break from it, and they're there to be a support network specifically to talk about that stuff. So I think it's just finding where you fit as well. Like, for some people, talking about those heavy topics is too much for them. Right. Especially if they're a big streamer. If they've got like a few thousand viewers, and those few thousand viewers at any one point in time need that energy from them, then it's going to be too much for them. Also, some people, it's much better for them to be funny and witty and sarcastic and dry. I know some incredible streamers who are just so dry and wry in their humor, and that's kind of how they are, because they would not be able to be just here smiling and bouncy and silly all the time. Like, if they were to try and stream like me, they'd quit in a week, because they just isn't who they are. And it isn't their environment's negative, it's just that's the tone that suits them. And other people are super chill, quieter, they're not talking at 1,000,000 miles an hour like I sometimes do, and they make a chill, relaxing space. Especially people that play chill, relaxing games that would probably drive me mad, like Animal Crossing. It's too slow and pastel for me. I can see why people love it, but I couldn't cope. So it's finding the space that projects the energy that best suits you, because what you project is going to very much dictate what comes back. Yeah,
that makes sense.
I hope that vaguely made sense.
No,
it was a lot of words.
No, it made perfect sense. And also, I didn't know, you enlightened me on something, because I didn't know that there were Twitch I can't even talk, Twitch streamers, let me say that slow, that do kind of mental health support and that sort of thing. That's interesting. I didn't know that. That's cool. I mean, it's if they're able to get on there and talk to people about topics like that and help people out, I think that's great. Because topics like that definitely need to be discussed more in society than they are. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely an important thing, and I try to be supportive and understanding of some of that stuff, and try and share some. I've helped raise a lot of money for Samaritans. My community were very much on board with that, and they were sharing some of those stories for themselves of why Samaritans was important to them, and I was doing the same for me. And if you guys don't know Samaritans, they're a 24/7 hour helpline that we have here in the UK. So if you are feeling lost, suicidal, or anything like
Mhm.
that, you just phone them up anonymously and you can talk to someone 24/7.
Mhm.
And that was something that really resonated with my community. But some of the things I see some of my friends doing,
Mhm.
the energy it takes to be able to take on like what
Yeah.
chat are talking to them about,
Yeah.
like I don't know if I could give that level of support. And I have
Mhm.
so much respect for people that
Mhm.
can do that. I do that occasionally on my streams, but
Mhm.
the people that focus on it as a main thing, you can imagine how kind of draining
Yeah.
as well as positive and supportive that can be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just, from personal experience, talking to my own friends and family whenever they're having problems, yes, I want to support them, I want to help them, but it definitely is
Yeah.
draining, and that's not a bad thing. That's just the nature of the beast. It is a very mentally draining thing to talk about a lot like that, very deeply. But
Yeah.
I think it's worth it if you're helping somebody. I think it's worth the draining aspect of it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got a lot of respect for people that do that as
Oh
their
yeah.
primary content, because it's
Hmm.
a difficult job.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would like to do some more of that, but for the most part, I think the best thing I can do to help people
Hmm.
is to make them laugh. And
Hmm.
my face helps in this regard.
And hey, laughter, what's the old saying, laughter is the best medicine. I mean, there's a lot of truth to that. There's a lot of, I mean, I could, me personally, I can be having a bad day and I see it like a single meme or something that makes me laugh, and that makes a big difference.
Well, sometimes I'm having a bad day
Hmm.
and I stream,
Hmm.
and I'm there and people are saying, thank you for streaming during the day. I'm stuck at home on furlough and I haven't spoken to anyone, and this is cheering me up. And I'm
Hmm.
like, you know what, mate, this is cheering me up.
Yeah.
I'm at home on my own, and like it was viewers that sent me the Lego I build in. So
Oh,
the Star
nice.
Wars Lego I have, that
Hmm.
was sent in by viewers. And then they get to laugh at me building it wrong because I'm dyspraxic and playing with the
Yeah.
Lego minifigures and reenacting scenes of Star Wars. And it's so silly, but
Hmm.
it's cheering me up
Hmm.
and it's cheering them up. And it's like, if that's what I can do to help people,
Hmm.
then that's what I'll do.
Absolutely. Awesome. Awesome. So I wanted to change gears for just a second and ask you this. So
Yeah.
I noticed whenever I was starting out with your YouTube channel and watching some of the older videos, I noticed you do a lot of analysis videos on different movies and TV shows. And the one thing I noticed about your analysis videos is they're really well done. Like, you go into a lot of detail. I can tell you put a lot of really good thought into these things, which is not something that I see a lot. So I wanted to ask you, well, that also combined with the production values of your YouTube videos, I wanted to ask you, do you have any like background in filmmaking or videography at all?
I have a analytical film degree.
Oh, wow.
So when it comes to breaking down the meanings in
Hmm.
film, that's what my degree is. I have an English
Hmm.
literature degree and a film studies degree. So that kind of analytical stuff, that's what I
Hmm.
studied. The filmmaking side of it, I learned for YouTube.
Yeah.
So I hadn't done anything to do with that beforehand.
Hmm.
I just spent a lot of time watching other YouTube videos and
Yeah.
how-to videos and
Yeah.
reading books and things, and figuring all that out. And I just
Hmm.
bought 3 very large lights with diffusers, which is a lot of why it looks decent,
Hmm.
because the lighting just makes everything
Oh, yeah.
look okay.
Yeah.
So that was kind of where that came from. But yeah, my YouTube videos aren't scripted.
Hmm.
They're just me rambling, and then when I realize I've been talking for too long, I stop.
Yeah.
So I do get asked by people, oh, do you write scripts for your YouTube videos? What
Hmm.
research did you do? My answer is generally I didn't.
Hmm.
That's the stuff that's in the videos is usually just the stuff I know off the top of my head.
Yeah.
um, and you get things that don't go quite to plan. Like, I
Hmm.
did a video on Alita Battle Angel.
Hmm.
um, and originally that was supposed to be like a film review video, and then after 50 minutes I realized I was still talking about the differences between the manga, the
Hmm.
anime OVA, and
Hmm.
the Western live action movie.
Hmm.
And I kind of went, I guess this is a video about the differences between those 3 now, because it's nearly an hour.
Hmm.
So I just kind of roll with it sometimes and do that. But yeah,
Yeah.
the history is in the analytical side rather than the production side.
That's awesome. And you know what? That makes some of your videos even more impressive. The fact that they're not scripted, because it's really hard to do unscripted videos. Like most of my videos are scripted. I do some unscripted videos. And when I first started out doing unscripted videos, I didn't do a very good job because I did ramble a lot, and my thoughts were all over the place. They weren't in really any kind of logical order. But I do find that the more that my confidence goes up and the more practice I get, I'm able to do unscripted videos a little bit better. But yeah, yours, I mean, like when I saw some of them, I thought they were scripted. So that's all.
Yeah, I get that quite a lot. There's been a couple where I have had notes. So the one
Hmm.
on the Team Labs exhibition in
Hmm.
Tokyo, like that required researching a ton of stuff. So that one had a lot of notes. But
Yeah.
anything that's movies, anime, games, and stuff is just me rambling. There's a
Yeah.
whole bunch of videos that are on Batman versus Superman,
Hmm.
and that's actually all one video.
Hmm.
But I realized that I'd been rambling for so long, I isolated the
Hmm.
different topics, and then I pretended it was a video series, but that was actually just me rambling about a
Hmm.
bunch of unconnected stuff and going off on a massive ranty tangent about one thing or another thing. And then
Yeah.
I just titled them appropriately, and
Hmm.
sometimes that works for me, because it means I can just, instead of me saying like, right, I'm going to make a video about this to do with this
Hmm.
part of this film, I just put the camera on and sort of went, and another thing, and then kind of sort of looked at all the video I'd went and went, we'll just chop this into 10-minute segments and
Yeah.
pretend I had a plan.
Hey, it worked. I watched those videos and yeah, it worked.
Yeah, once I realized that that's what I was doing, I started occasionally changing my jacket so that
Hmm.
I'm not wearing exactly the same outfit in every
Yeah.
video, which also gives the illusion there was some kind of plan. It
Yeah.
totally wasn't.
Nice.
But you
Nice.
know, it was good fun.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, I don't have a background in filmmaking or videography. I'm learning them both right now
Mhm.
because that's born out of the YouTube channel was me
Yeah,
wanting to get into filmmaking and get more into videography. So I have
cool.
been on a quest to teach myself all of these things, and you know, it feels good whenever you teach your or not necessarily teach yourself something, but it feels good when you really sit down and learn something new and start to get good at it. It feels good, and I always encourage people to you know, take the time to try to learn a new skill or learn just something new, because I think it can be great for your confidence and mental health and that sort of thing. So um, I might pick your brain on some filmmaking stuff at some point as I get more
Yeah,
into
no
that.
worries.
Yeah. So what, so I know you collect video games. I can see that from behind you. I see a box Sega Mega Drive, a box Atari
Yeah, I
Jaguar.
mean, they're not really, it isn't really a collection,
Hmm.
because this is just all my childhood stuff.
That's awesome.
I'm more of a childhood hoarder than a collector.
Yeah.
So I've got like a bunch of stuff, which is, this is literally like my childhood Mega Drive, my childhood
Hmm.
Jaguar. I was just the sort of kid who didn't get rid of the box.
That's awesome.
I filled in the,
Hmm.
the little like warranty card,
Hmm.
and then couldn't bear to part with it, so it's still in there. Like the original plastic bags and cable ties are still in there because I just
Hmm.
refuse to be parted with any part of this precious item.
That's
Because
awesome.
that's the first thing I ever bought myself.
Hmm.
I saved up for that with pocket money on a
Hmm.
weekly basis. So a bunch of this stuff is my childhood stuff, and then I have slowly over time bought things that I wanted as a kid
Hmm.
but didn't have. So I desperately wanted a Saturn, and I have one of those now. And same with like the Game Boys. I wanted them at the time and couldn't afford them and things like
Hmm.
that. So it's more just the adult me saying, well, now I can have the things child me wanted, rather than me trying to get any complete collection in that kind
Yeah.
of format. I could become a collector, but I'm
Hmm.
well aware that I would never be able to afford food or rent or ever leave my house again. So I try to curb that
Hmm.
kind of instinct, and just stick to stuff that I actually physically
Yeah.
want to play.
Yeah, that's good because collecting is a very slippery slope, a
I
slope that
could
I've fell
easily
down.
have ended up like that. Yeah, I used
Yeah.
to collect trading cards as a kid,
Hmm.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle ones and Thunderbird ones and things like
Nice.
that, and comic books as well.
Hmm.
I bought loads of comic books when I was younger. I think statues are the only one where I keep saying I don't collect statues, but I've got more than 50. So I don't know at what point I have to accept I'm lying to myself. But I really try and curb that instinct to have complete sets of things. Because I'm just like, no, just only buy the one you really, really want. You don't have to have every edition of this. You don't need every variant cover and the holofoil one. You don't need it. Take the word out. And just try and get the few bits and pieces I really want. But yeah, it's a struggle.
It is. I wish I had followed your methodology, because I went a little bit crazy with the GameCube. I have a lot of love for the GameCube, and I
just one or two behind you.
Yeah. I didn't stop collecting for the GameCube until I had every single North American release. So I do have a complete North American GameCube collection. And I went a little bit overboard with it. But the good thing is they're not just sitting on the shelf collecting dust. I do play them, and I'm trying to make a video about every GameCube game in a series I call GameCube Gallery. So so they are at least getting some love. Which, I mean, games are meant to be played, but it's also good to preserve them as well. I think game preservation is important for the history of gaming. But I have to say, I'm always jealous, and not in like a negative way. You know what I'm saying? I'm always jealous when I see somebody that has stuff that they had when they were a kid, especially when it comes to gaming, because my stupid ass, every single thing I had when I was a kid, I ended up getting rid of. I had a GameCube with like 60 games. I had a Super Nintendo, a Sega Genesis. I had all that, a Game Boy Color, and I ended up getting rid of all of it. And I really regret it, because I would love to have at least one thing that I had when I was a kid, but unfortunately I don't. But
I was quite lucky, because my mum was very on board with not chucking stuff away. Her parents were the type of parents that chucked stuff away when you were too old for it. So as a result, my mum was always like, are you sure you want to get rid of that? And kind of encouraged keeping some key items. So I'm quite lucky that I still have some of the toys and things from when I was a baby, my first pair of like little like ballet shoes and my first little like things. I've still got the Airfix aeroplane kits I made when I was like 10, and I'm really happy to have that stuff. But things like the Mega Drive, I took that to uni with me. I was still playing that in university,
Awesome.
Like it wasn't going to go away, because I just literally never stopped playing it. It's still one of my favorite consoles to date. Like in some ways I'm glad that child me kept the box, because that's awesome, and people are often quite envious of it because it's in perfect condition.
It looks good. It looks really good.
I was super precious over that. And of course, like, it means it's worth a lot more money, but I'm never going to sell it anyway. So it's almost irrelevant at this point, but it makes excellent background set dressing.
Yeah, it really does. Would you say that that's your most prized possession in as far as the stuff that you've kept from childhood?
I would definitely be very, very sad if anything happened to that Mega Drive. So it is definitely up there. I quite like having the box Jaguar, because just a lot of people have opinions about that console. And it's a very good talking point. And I just get to like pull out the controller and go, look at this.
Yeah, that controller is
look at all the buttons you get. Look at all the buttons you get. I'm like, return on investment, buttons to each dollar you spent. You get the best deal with the Jaguar controller. You get at least 10 more buttons than any other controller. So I do enjoy that as a talking point as well. And the fact I got the plushy ones, that if you spotted those in the background.
Oh yeah. Oh wow.
Custom, you stay logo. Somebody 3D printed my logo for me, which is adorable.
Very nice.
It's a plushy Mega Drive too.
That is awesome. That is really cool. I need to find a plushy GameCube.
Yeah. They make them. Same person makes them. I'll have to send you the link to the person that custom makes these plushies. Yes, because they're adorable. And I'm babysitting this one, which belongs to a friend of mine, which is a Japanese licensed Genesis one, as you would call them.
Oh, it has arms and legs. That's awesome.
His hands are controllers, and his foot is a plug.
I love it.
Still with the tag. That's sadly not mine. I'm babysitting it. It's called Monty the Mega Drive. And yeah, that's another one that's a good talking point, and that's a prized possession, but it's not actually mine, so I don't know if that counts.
Yeah, that's really cool. So comic books and graphic novels, those are
Hmm.
things that I kind of missed out on until
Okay.
recently. I've started recently kind of getting into some of them. So I wanted to ask you, because you definitely seem to be very, very knowledgeable when it comes to comic books and graphic novels. For somebody that's kind of new to it, like me, what sort of comics or graphic novels would you recommend that I get into outside of the obvious ones like DC and Marvel stuff?
It's going to depend on what you like reading. There's comic books about everything. I think
Yeah,
there's a
that's
big
true.
misconception that
Hmm.
superheroes are what comic books are about.
Right.
Superheroes are just what made comic books known.
Yeah.
But there are comic books about everything. And if you expand it to include manga as well,
Hmm.
you could be reading a slice of life drama about a
Hmm.
tennis coach one day and a demon slayer the next day
Hmm.
and yelling, Shinji, get in the robot on another day. There's a whole massive range of stuff. So I think one of the
Hmm.
main things is to not limit yourself to just
Yeah.
the things you've heard about.
Hmm.
And a lot of the comic books that are my favorite ones aren't necessarily going to be the big obvious ones like
Hmm.
Batman and Superman and these kind of things. So yeah, more like things like Transmetropolitan,
Hmm.
which is a cyberpunk sort of futuristic story about a very jaded journalist who doesn't
Hmm.
want to do his job but does his job very well. And it's violent and funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would be the best way to describe that one. I read a lot of indie comic books, so a
Hmm.
lot of the guys I interview is because I read their work. And they, again, you'll find things which are a bit more left field and are
Hmm.
of a wider range of topics. So I think it's just finding that inroad to something you like. And then
Yeah.
once you've found one thing, it will be, if you like this, you may
Hmm.
also like this. And suddenly
Hmm.
the search engines become quite useful in that regard. But I read a lot of sci-fi, cyberpunk,
Hmm.
and those kind of things. So find a genre you like
Yeah.
and then find comic books that are in that area, I
Yeah.
think would be my best advice.
Yeah, that's great advice. Unfortunately for me, I like a lot of genres. So so that could be yeah, I could end up going down another slippery slope with comics if I start really
Yeah,
getting
if the
heavily into
comic
them.
people, they're good at making you want to collect stuff.
Yeah.
I used to be a nightmare for that, buying the individual versions, buying the
Hmm.
variant cover art versions, buying
Hmm.
the foil cover versions, then buying the collected graphic novel version of that. And I'd be like,
Hmm.
I've got the same story, but 5 times here.
Hmm.
I could
Yeah.
have bought like 5 different stories. I also read a lot of Neil Gaiman stuff as well, like the
Oh
Sandman
yeah.
series and things like that. And
Hmm.
I usually point people in that direction if they think comic books are just superheroes,
Hmm.
because it has such a different tone.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's about just finding those areas, and you have to make a big list or something.
Yeah.
There's something to put on Twitter. List, say,
Yeah.
here are my genres, name me some comic books, and I think you'll find a
Hmm.
lot of people will throw
Hmm.
recommendations at you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I watched quite a few of your interviews on your YouTube channel where you interviewed some of the indie comic guys, and a lot of those comics are really, really fascinating and really unique ideas. It almost seems to me like kind of like what I see in video games. Like some of the coolest ideas right now are coming from indie games. It almost
Mm.
seems to be like the same way with the comic book scene too. Like some really cool ideas are coming from the indie comic book scene.
Absolutely. Big publishers, at the end of the day, they've
Hmm.
got investors, they've got a board of
Yep.
directors, they've got people that need to know that what they put out is going to make money for the
Hmm.
bottom line. And that, unfortunately, is business.
Yeah.
So if you want to do stuff that's more niche, that's more left field, that's
Hmm.
more, original some ways. I mean, some AAA titles really are amazing in games and
Yeah.
in comics, but
Oh,
your unusual, strange little idea. For example, there's one I read called NPCT, which
mhm.
is a little cute comic book that I've forgotten the lady's name. My apologies. But she wrote it when she was depressed to cheer
Mhm.
herself and her friends up. And it's about the NPC characters from a D&D world who set up a tea shop.
Oh, nice.
And it's just adorable and
Yeah.
nice, and it has beautiful, like the color work in it
Mhm.
is absolutely gorgeous, but it's not something that a big company is ever going to
Right.
publish. And it was just
Right.
this lovely little comic book that's just there to make you smile.
Mhm.
And you're not going to get those ideas from places like Marvel, DC, because it wouldn't be
Yeah.
profitable enough for them.
Yeah.
Their hands are pretty much tied by the way the business works.
Yeah. Yeah. And me personally, I'm a, like any kind of media or form of entertainment. I always try to get into the indie scene, especially with video games. I'm a huge supporter of indie games. I try to give indie games attention on my channel, just like you do with indie comics on your channel. And I've seen you cover several indie games as well,
Mhm.
because like I said, I think some of the most original ideas right now are coming from the indie scene. And it makes sense what you're saying, because a lot of these companies, these big companies, they probably don't want to take a chance on some of these ideas because they're not sure if it's going to make them money or not. They would rather
Which
stick
means
to
they
the things.
literally can't take that chance,
Right.
which is unfortunate. I
It
mean,
is.
I've interviewed quite a lot of indie games developers.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ones that kind of jumps to mind as here is a game that no AAA publisher would be allowed to publish
Mm-hmm.
is a little game that's called the Collage Atlas.
Hmm.
And it's a first person exploratory introspective game with no real objectives.
Mm-hmm.
It's in black and white,
Mm-hmm.
and every single asset in the game, every tree, every rock, every item is hand drawn and
Wow.
scanned in. So
Wow.
it's pen and ink and scanned in. So every tree in that game is 8 hours of drawing.
Wow.
Like, it's stunning, it's
Mm-hmm.
unique, it's as much art project as it is game.
Mm-hmm.
And that obviously has to exist in the indie scene. And I think
Mm-hmm.
he actually received some funding because he was doing the whole thing, I think, pretty much on his own.
Wow.
He actually did receive some arts funding for it at one point, I believe. But obviously, that is going to be something that is so niche and so
Mm-hmm.
unusual that that's where you're going to find it. And it's been lovely to see, especially in the UK comic book
Mm-hmm.
conventions and games conventions, we have dedicated indie areas now, and they're getting bigger every year. And
Yeah.
that's just incredible to see.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, yeah, I've seen. I mean, honestly, some of the best games that I've played in the last few years have been indie games,
Mm.
and some of the most beautiful games that I've seen in the last few years, not necessarily from a just amazing technical showpiece of just 4K graphics and stuff like that. I mean, some of the more beautiful games from like an artistic perspective, have
Yeah.
been in the indie scene. There's some really, really talented people out there, and a lot of these people don't necessarily get the recognition that they deserve. But hopefully they will at some point. Obviously, I've unfortunately never been to England or the UK or anything like that. I do have several friends over there. A buddy of mine that works in special effects for Hollywood is over there, and I've got a couple of really good YouTube friends over there. But I wanted to ask you, what's the collecting scene like over there as far as like retro games and stuff? Is it like it is in the United States where it's getting to the point to where it's hard to find this stuff because everybody's buying it up, or is it still pretty plentiful?
It's a big scene over here now, so we
Mm-hmm.
have entire conventions just dedicated to
Mm-hmm.
retro games now, and it's definitely, we are at a point, I think, worldwide where retro gaming
Yeah.
is very much a hot topic, and
Oh yeah.
collecting it is very
Yep.
much the thing that's going on. So
Mm-hmm.
the prices are going up everywhere as
Mm-hmm.
that
Yes.
demand goes up. You'll
Yes.
also find that people in the UK will also have complete collections of US
Mm-hmm.
games and Japanese games and
Wow.
European variants of
Mm-hmm.
games. So there are people over here which have collections which include all of your GameCube games, and then all of our ones as
Mm-hmm.
well. So I think that's another thing.
Mm-hmm.
I do like the fact that there is a mix of serious collectors and
Mm-hmm.
people who are more hobbyist as well.
Yeah.
Like, so there is a good blend of people here, but we do have more kind of retro gaming shops starting to
Mm-hmm.
pop up and events and get-togethers and things. So I suspect it's probably quite similar.
Mm-hmm. It is. Yeah. And I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I actually like the fact that retro games have exploded in popularity, because it because well, one reason why I like that is because I don't like the idea of these games being stuck in somebody's garage or being stuck on a table at a flea market, or being stuck in somebody's attic or somebody's storage unit. So I like the fact that it's getting more popular so that people can find these games, get them out of those just where they're just rotting away in somebody's basement or something, and play them or add them to their collection. So it's almost to me like retro games are being rescued right now. You know what I mean? It's kind of
Mm.
a different way of looking at it, but I think it's important for game preservation too, to make sure that we get these things out of places where they could get damaged and try to preserve them. Because I'm all about, that's one of the things that I'm very passionate about when it comes to collecting, is the preservation aspect of it. Because I think it's very important for us to keep these things alive and not just let them disappear.
Yeah, one of my friends has one of the largest complete boxed Rexo console collections in the world.
Wow.
And he takes those to events and lets people play them.
That's awesome.
Which some people tell him is completely mad for doing.
Yeah.
I've interviewed him a couple of times over on the YouTube channel if anyone wants to see any of that. We spent over an hour just unboxing the not Nintendo handhelds once.
Nice.
And then another hour or so unboxing the Mega Drive variants collection. You know, it's that's really cool to see. But those are all still played and they're all shared. And it's lovely to see, like, especially at the events, there's a lot of younger people. We're noticing lots of younger people getting into the retro gaming scene.
Yeah.
And they get to experience some really unusual consoles and things that they never would be able to play on otherwise.
Yeah.
And I think that's an amazing thing as well. There's that preservation aspect, and there's that sharing the history of these things aspect. So I'm very much in favor of keeping these things alive, taking care of them. The amount of repair shops that have opened up that will repair things and you know, replace all the capacitors on every Game Boy ever, and take care of them. I think that's really important. And we're seeing the same with retro arcades as well.
Yeah.
So we have one of the largest, I think it is the largest retro arcade in Europe, near Manchester in the UK.
Is that the one you did a video about? I think I saw that.
I did, yeah. Arcade Club. And they repair those machines. A lot of them, they get them, they're not in fully functioning sort of order when they pick them up, but they will restore them and take care of them and put them back into use, free play in an arcade.
That's
and
awesome.
That's lovely again, because you see people bringing their kids and their kids are playing Pac-Man, and again, that's sharing that experience with a new generation. And I think like those two sides of that, the preservation and also just sharing the enjoyment and remembering what games are for.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. And one thing you mentioned that I really like, I love it when I see younger people getting into retro games, because nothing makes me, there's only a few things that make me feel old. I mean, I'm only 32. I'll be turning 33 in a few months.
I'm just going to say it quietly at this point.
But anybody, like, whenever I'm talking to somebody a lot younger than me, and I'm talking about an NES or a Super Nintendo, and they don't know what the hell I'm talking about, that makes me feel old. But so it makes me really love it whenever I talk to somebody younger than me, and they do know what these things are and actually play these systems. And I'm like, you know what? That's awesome.
Yeah, I've seen YouTube channels springing up that I won't call them kids. That's mean. They're like 19, 20. But they're like their entire channels are just modifying Game Boys or making unusual Raspberry Pi based systems and things. And like, that's really awesome. It's really lovely to see like the younger gen. I'm just going to sound old now. These young'uns.
Yep, right.
Coming in here, stealing our Game Boys. It is lovely to see that passion is kind of there, because a lot of these old games, a lot of them aged really well.
Oh yeah.
They weren't relying on graphics because we didn't have any, and there is like a gaming experience that just works well. Pong is still an incredible game. Pong is you know, just the absolute, you want to see, you know, incredible game design. I always just point people at Pong. I tell people the story of my younger sibling found a Pong machine at a yard sale. I was very angry I didn't spot it first. I can tell you it was like $5, you know.
Yeah.
And it works. And I remember my poor mother walked in, and this PlayStation that she'd bought for my sibling was just turned off, and we'd spent 2 hours playing Pong.
That's awesome.
And I felt really guilty. I was like, we should probably go back to playing Tomb Raider, because she'd spent a lot of money on that PlayStation, and we were playing this $5 secondhand Pong machine. And it's just kind of proof that at its essence, gameplay is this fun?
Yes.
And two rectangles and a dot is effectively all you need to make it fun. And that kind of makes a lot of the really retro games just exceedingly timeless.
Oh yeah. A great example that I'm sure you'll really agree with me, being such a Sega fan, is the older Sonic the Hedgehog games. They have aged so well. They just play so smooth. They're so much fun to play. I mean, to me, those are retro games that still feel like a modern game because of how
Mm.
fast and smooth they are.
Yes, or the blast processing, which is not
Yeah.
something they ever said in the UK. So it's always funny to see that on American advertising. But
Yeah.
look at Sonic Mania.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Sonic Mania is just the old games
Yep.
and then turned up to 11.
Yep.
And that brought in a whole new sort of wave of younger people playing those Sonic games as well.
Yep.
The characters are still great fun. The levels are
Mm-hmm.
great fun. The music's amazing. It just still works. Streets of
Mm-hmm.
Rage is another example.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Streets of Rage 2 still plays incredibly well. The
Mm-hmm.
latest version, Streets of Rage 4, that's beautiful as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good gameplay, just doesn't age.
You're right. You are absolutely right. And while we're on the topic of Sonic, I have to ask you, have you
Mhm.
seen the Sonic the Hedgehog movie? And if you have, what did you think about it?
I have not seen the Sonic the Hedgehog movie,
Oh,
which most people are surprised about. I watched Deadpool.
yeah.
Like, sorry, Sonic, there was no contest.
Mhm. I totally understand. I do recommend it though, because I found it to be a very entertaining movie. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I didn't know quite what to expect of it. I
Hmm.
don't tend to watch a lot of kind of kids family
Hmm.
movies,
Yeah,
those
yeah.
kind of movies. I'm not big on a lot of the Pixar type
Hmm.
things, that kind of area. And I kind of assumed it was going to be that kind of
And
thing.
yeah, it's got some adult humor in it. Not like
Yeah,
not
I
like
think it's
Deadpool levels, but
I just it's weird because I like being very colorful and
yeah.
silly
Hmm.
and positive and stuff, and then a lot of the media I watch is really not. You
Yeah.
know, I'm very much the end of the world
Hmm.
cyberpunk, you know, Ghost in the Shell and Snowpiercer and
Hmm.
Altered
Oh,
Carbon and The
Snowpiercer.
Expanse, and
Hmm.
this is the kind of stuff I watch. I've
Hmm.
just finished watching Alice in Borderland, which is
Hmm.
not nice to any of its protagonists, and I tend to watch really dark media,
I do.
but
I'm the
whilst
same
looking
way.
really brightly colored and chirpy.
I am exactly the same way. I really prefer, for some reason, darker movies and TV shows. I don't know why. I just tend to gravitate towards those. I don't know why. I just do. So I like Snowpiercer, for example. The Snowpiercer movie
Hmm.
with Chris Evans. I absolutely loved that movie. I've
Yeah.
never read. It is based off of a comic, right?
Yeah, it's based off, I believe, French graphic novel series, which I
That's right.
haven't
Yeah,
read, but it
I
kind
haven't
of
either.
deviates partway through, and
Hmm.
then the TV series then is another
Hmm.
deviation. So it's like we've got these multiple different
Hmm.
universe versions of the story, and
Yeah,
each version is awesome in its own way.
yeah. And earlier, did I hear you mention The Expanse? I've always wondered about that. Is that a good show?
Oh yes, it
Yeah.
takes a few episodes to get going. I
Hmm.
really think they did themselves a bit of a disservice because
Hmm.
the pace and the tone, I don't think they set it correctly in that first episode.
Gotcha.
Once it gets going and it's proper, you know, it is just your absolute space
Hmm.
opera cyberpunk type stuff. The guy's
Nice.
got a hat, he's basically
Hmm.
a cop, he's going after, like, you know, alien type stuff. It's good. The book series is good as well, so
Hmm.
whichever way you want to go, the TV series, the books, they're both excellent.
Very cool. Very cool. What about, have you ever watched Westworld?
Do you know what? I haven't watched Westworld. I really don't like westerns.
Hmm.
It's the reason I haven't watched Firefly, which shocks
Yeah.
a lot of people.
Well, here's the thing about Westworld though, and I'm sure you know this, but it's not really a Western. Especially when
It
you get
has
to
the
season
pacing
three.
of one. Yeah, the
Yeah.
problem is I watched the first episode and I was like, oh, it's gonna have the
Hmm.
pacing and color, you know, color
Hmm.
schemes and stuff of a western to start with, and I just find my brain switches off. And it was very annoying because I was like, clearly this is something I'll like, but
Hmm.
it's going to be a harder slog for me to get through it, because I even found that
Yeah.
with the Mandalorian. The Mandalorian's a
Hmm.
western,
Hmm.
so I got to the occasional point where I was like, just fast forward on this bit because it's just going to be a slow sweeping scene, probably in
Hmm.
some shades of ochre and
Hmm.
brown. And I just found myself occasionally going, get back to Baby Yoda, throwing people across the room. um, but for some reason, that genre, I just
Hmm.
really have trouble getting into it.
So what about Cowboy Bebop though? Because some people consider that like a space western.
Yeah, and for that reason, I haven't watched all of Cowboy Bebop, which also shocks people. Don't worry, I have watched all of Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood yet. Please don't abandon me, anime community. I need to watch all the way through Cowboy Bebop, but anything that's like Western based, I just struggle, and it's very frustrating for me because I know there's a lot of really good content that falls under that genre or cross genre, and yeah, I'm just kind of barring myself to entry to a lot of good things by just getting impatient with it.
Hey, nothing wrong with that. I mean, you know, I mean, we only have so much time on our hands and there's so much stuff to watch. So, you know, everybody's got to kind of prioritize what they want to watch based on their likes and dislikes and what they're into. So, yeah, totally understand. I am going to recommend giving Westworld another try though. I do have
It's
to
on
say
my
that.
list of things, but then they released the Snowpiercer TV series
I need to
and
watch
another
that.
series of The Expanse, and there's so much good stuff right now.
Yeah. My list just keeps growing too, so I understand. So here's a question for you that I like to ask people that I get on the podcast, and you've kind of touched on this a little bit, but how did you get into gaming? And the second part of my question was, what was the first console you fell in love with? But I think we know the answer to that.
The first games that I played, I don't know exactly what they were on because they were around friends' houses.
Yeah.
And when you're a kid, you aren't going, so could you please tell me if this is a C64, an Amiga, an Atari, a Spectrum? At the time, I was like, so you put the cassette in, there's some funny noises, and then the pixels move. This is amazing.
Yep.
And I fell in love from that point on. We had a very, very strong home computer gaming scene here in the UK. There were tons of homebrew developers here. We were making hardware. We had a really, really big scene at the time. So everyone I knew, I grew up on a council estate, so lots of apartments all together in close proximity. And every kid had a console or home computer.
That's awesome.
So we would all play and borrow each other's stuff. So the first thing I remember playing was something where you were a motorbike and you went like this. And I can't for the life of me tell you what it was. I just thought it was amazing because it mostly crashed, to be fair, but it moved when I told it to move. And if it crashed, it was my fault. And the idea that you could make the pixels move on a screen was just like some kind of like witchcraft, you know. It was just a phenomenal thing. So I fell in love with it from that point on and became fascinated with computers and anything like that at the time. The first console that we had was the Sega Master System.
Love that
That
console.
wasn't mine, that was my siblings, but it was in the shared room. So I loved the Master System, and we had the light gun. So we had like Operation Wolf and Rescue Mission, and I was obsessed.
Yeah.
Absolutely obsessed. So that was my first love. Although I also played the NES that the kids had, you know, next door and things like that. But yeah, that was the Mega Drive was the first one that was mine and only mine. And I had a little tiny, I've still got the CRT. It's about that big. I still have my first CRT and it still works.
That's
solid
awesome.
tech. Because I was still playing the Mega Drive on that TV at uni. So that one is the one that has the most longest love affair, because it's never gone out of my library of games. I never stopped. But yeah, I think that loading up cassettes was just something that was incredible because I wanted to know how it worked. I wanted to know what it was doing. I wanted to know, you know, what was going on with it. It was so fascinating. And I think nowadays, you know, kids can just, again, I'm sounding old. The kids, they just turn on their switches or just on their computers and the game's just there. And I think there was something slightly magical about saying, here is a cassette tape. And the sounds on this translate into ones and zeros, and the ones and zeros tell this magical box with a keyboard on it what to do. And there was something about seeing that happening and seeing that thing's loading up that just absolutely hooked me in.
Yeah. It really is kind of mind blowing when you think about it. I mean, how it works and how we as humans figured out how to make that work. It's just mind blowing. And now look at what it's turned into to get today, which kind of segues into my next question for you.
Yeah.
Is what do you think about the modern gaming scene? Because there's a lot of good things about the modern gaming scene, but there's also a lot of bad things about the modern gaming scene. So what are your thoughts on it?
I think that all the good things that were there before are still there. There's
Oh
just
yeah.
a lot more things now.
Oh yeah.
So you just have to kind of find your pocket that fits within it, be that with the retro gaming, the indie gaming, you know, the esports and things. Like you just find the areas where you fit. So I do quite like some of the esports type stuff, but I myself could never compete. I have a coordination disability called dyspraxia. So I can't read maps, which made Alien Isolation very terrifying. And I love some of those events and watching people do those things, but I couldn't compete in them. Like I wouldn't want to. I'm not, I say I'm not that competitive, and then someone will write in some comments about how they've totally seen me rage quit something. But I love observing that scene, and I would love the idea of commentating esports at some point. I think that would be amazing fun. But I can see why for some people that's too much pressure. There is obviously a lot of toxicity to manage in anything that gets that competitive. But if you go over to like the indie scene, or if you go over to things like, you know, people that play Stardew Valley and Animal Crossing and things, that's super chill and super relaxing. And I kind of like the fact that there is this whole world now, this whole variety, and there is no one way to define what gaming is. Is it VR? Is it mobile gaming? Is it old consoles? Is it, you know, it's all these different things. And some parts of it are completely mainstream and some parts of it are still really niche. And I just find it awesome to see how it has just exploded to the degree it has. And over the last year or so, more and more people have discovered things like gaming and Twitch and that way of interacting and socializing. And there is that element that for all the divisive and problematic or toxic things that you can get, there's just as much support and welcoming and these kind of sides as well. It's just a reflection of the real world, just in a pixelated format.
Yeah, absolutely. And you sound like you're kind of similar to me in that I like to experience everything gaming has to offer. I don't like to limit myself to one particular console or one particular type of gaming. You know, I like to dip my toes into a little bit of everything, you know, whether it's mobile gaming or playing on a PS4 or a Nintendo Switch, or retro gaming, or a game on the PC, or VR. I like to experience as much as I can. You know, I mean, there's nothing wrong with people that like to limit themselves to a single particular type of gaming. That's fine, you know. But me personally, I love gaming so much that I want to experience as much that it has to offer as I can. And I also never want to see any particular aspect of gaming fail. Like, I don't ever look at a console and say, I hope that console fails, which unfortunately there are a lot of people that do that. That's never been my mindset. And because I mean, why would you want any aspect of gaming like that to fail? Why would you want a console to fail? It's, you know, the more successful a console is, the better games we're going to get and the more variety we're going to have. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but you get what I'm saying.
Oh, don't worry, I can't complain about tangents. Like, I'll do that for 4 hours at a time on my streams, so that's all good. But I do see where you're coming from there. I tend to have, I think the only thing I don't do with gaming, well, there's a couple of genres of age rating I don't go near, but other than that, I'll leave that for the viewer's imagination, especially in VR. But apart from that, the only thing I don't tend to play is really realistic games. I don't have much interest in games that are sort of realistic simulations or games that are too realistic graphics even. Like, I don't tend to play like your Call of Duties and stuff like that, or any of your the super realistic, beautiful, don't get me wrong, stunning like racing games. Like, I'll play Serious Sam and Wipeout, you know, like
Serious Sam.
that's my kind of area. So I think that's probably the only things I don't tend to go near. But there's so many games that, as with the TV show watching, I don't have time to play all the ones I want to, let alone to try some of the ones I'm less interested in. So, yeah, I tend to just go for anything that's fun and stylized. I think that's the aesthetic I tend towards. Something that's an escape from the real world rather than a recreation of it. But I'll play some Beat Saber one day. I'll play some Doom Eternal another day. I'll be playing Chrono Trigger on the day after that. Like there's a wide range of stuff that I do play, because I think it's just mood dependent. It's like one day I'll watch a comedy movie. I want to watch, you know, like Zoolander or something, and the next day I'll want to watch like a Clockwork Orange or something like that. You know, there's always going to be variety, I think, just to suit your tastes.
But I thought Farming Simulator was your favorite game. So no Farming Simulator for you?
Have you seen the video where I interview the developer of a farming simulator game?
Did you really? No, I haven't seen that.
It's really funny because they're lovely people, but I'm like, you could just see me there going, I can see how much work you've put into this, but I do not get it. And at one point they're like, we've got a new patch coming out that's going out to everyone who was an early adopter of the game. And I was like, what's it called? And they were like, Potato Patch. And I was like, you could just see my face like, right. And they were lovely guys, and what they'd created was obviously a really good example of of that genre, but you could just see on my face I absolutely just don't get at all what it is that is the reason that draws people to it. But lovely guys. And I try to, like, I interview a bunch of people who make things that I see as valuable content, but I will also try and talk to the people that are making content that my viewers might like, even if it's something I don't quite get. But I think that's the funniest one, because you can just see I don't. I'm asking the right questions. I'm making the right noises, and I appreciate what they've done. But I'm just sitting there going like, I really hope they don't ask me if I'm going to play their game, because I don't want to lie, but equally I don't want to sound like I don't appreciate all of their incredible hard work.
Hey, I'm sure they appreciate you just taking the time to interview them and show their game to people. So at the end of the day, that's awesome. And, you know, one of the great things about games is there's so much variety out there that it's almost impossible to not find something that you love. On the flip side, there's so many games and so much variety out there that if you're somebody like me that likes to play almost everything, it's so frustrating, because every single day I'll see a new game I want to play and I just don't have time.
Every meme, which is like, you know, person looking forward at new game, and then the backlog of games going, hey, every meme like that is so true. You always buy games quicker than you can play them, and the GOG and Steam sales have a lot to answer for. There was a GOG sale where like there were games from 70 pence, was whatever that is, like 80 cents or something. And that was dangerous, because I was just like, I've just spent $25 on games that cost $2 or under. How am I ever going to get through all of these?
I've done that a lot. I've done that in particular on Steam with Steam sales, and I've also done it on the Nintendo Switch, because there's usually a lot of good sales on the Switch eShop. And then the next thing I know, I've got like 20 games that I've never played. It's kind of a problem, but you know, at least they're there. If I ever,
it's a good problem.
It's a good problem. So speaking of your interviews, that's one of the things that I really enjoy about your channel is all the different interviews that you do, and you're really good at interviewing people.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, because I can't quite tell when you interview people, do you know the questions ahead of time, or like at a con, whenever you see like a certain comic book area and somebody there you want to interview, is it just like a spur of the moment kind of thing and you're coming up with the questions as you go, or is there any like planning to it?
At the beginning of the interview, I ask them if there is any particular thing that they want mentioned that I should ask, because they might say, oh, I'm just about to launch a Kickstarter for volume 2, or oh, I just got a merchandising deal, or I just have made these plushies that we're going to put up, or something like that. So I will ask them, is there anything in particular you want me to definitely ask? But other than that, it is all just free form.
Nice.
because we don't have a huge amount of time.
Yeah.
I just wait for a quiet moment. Obviously, I say,
Mhm.
do you want to be interviewed? And they say, yeah. And then I wait till there's a quiet moment,
Mhm.
because I think this is true of Comic-Cons in any country of the world. There is always wave of people.
Yeah.
Break, wave
Yeah.
of people. And so I wait for one of those breaks, quickly
Mhm.
sneak in, because I'm doing most of those interviews all on my own. So I have
Mhm.
to set up the tripod and sort everything out and quickly do the interview, and then
Mhm.
get out of people's ways, because I don't want to be in the way of customers trying
Yeah.
to get to their stalls either.
Yeah.
So it's mostly completely spare at the moment. I just try
Mhm.
and make sure that if they have something important, that I am definitely covering that.
Yeah. Well, your interviews are very impressive. I mean, from my perspective, it looked like they were very well like planned in advance as far as like the questions and stuff go. So it's very impressive that you're able to kind of come up with a lot of those questions in the moment, because that's hard to do sometimes, especially in an environment like that when there's so many distractions all around you, you know. Do you have any tips for doing a good interview?
I think just find the style that works for you.
Mm-hmm.
My style is very conversational, and
Mm-hmm.
I do think my brain goes at 100 miles an hour thinking of all these questions I want to
Mm-hmm.
ask, because I'm passionate about what they're doing, and
Yeah.
because I have this mindset where I always want to know how everything works.
Yeah.
So my brain will be going, but how did you do that? But what did
Mm-hmm.
you use to do that? So what's your
Mm-hmm.
next thing? And my brain wants to deconstruct everything they've
Mm-hmm.
made. And an interview is just an excuse for me to ask them a lot of questions
Mm-hmm.
and find out their process and what they're working on. But different people will have different interview styles.
Mm-hmm.
Also, for me, it's quite important to get a read on what the person I'm interviewing is like themselves. So some of
Yeah.
the people, in
Yeah.
fact, quite a few of the people I've interviewed, I could be their first ever interview. That could be their first time talking on
Right.
camera.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as you've got to think about what you're doing, it isn't about you. It's about
Mm-hmm.
presenting the person you're interviewing.
Mm-hmm.
So the worst thing you can do as an interviewer is take over the interview
Right.
and to talk over people, to make it about you,
Mm-hmm.
to steal the limelight. You're not there to do
Mm-hmm.
that. You want to encourage that person and bear in mind that they may be shy and they might not know what they want to say, and to
Mm-hmm.
put them at ease, to make it as less intimidating as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Make it clear to them that if they want to stop, take a breath, give an answer
Mm-hmm.
again, that they completely can do that. And I think that makes as much a difference as anything else, because it's a two-way conversation. You have to
Mm-hmm.
both feel comfortable with what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm making a mental note of everything that you're saying, because I like to find game collectors that are, you know, within a drivable distance from me, and see and say, hey, you know, are you cool with me doing a tour of your collection on video and interviewing you about collecting in your collection? So definitely going to make a note of all these things. So appreciate the
No
tips.
worries.
Um, so another thing I wanted to ask you that I like to ask people about is, how do you feel about gaming slowly transitioning to being all or mostly digital? So we're seeing we're starting to see the beginnings of the decline of physical games. How do you feel about that transition?
It's a really difficult one,
Yeah.
because both formats come with advantages and
Mm-hmm.
disadvantages. We
Exactly.
see some things that become lost media because there was only physical things. Like there
Mm-hmm.
are some series that I stupidly gave away that I used to have anime VHS tapes for.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get them anymore.
Yeah.
There is no digital version of those unless somebody uploaded them to YouTube and didn't get copyright struck, because
Mm-hmm.
the company that made those is now completely defunct, and no
Mm-hmm.
one owns the license anymore. It's just languishing in an anime purgatory somewhere. And you have that thing of, if this was digital, there'd be more copies of it. But then
Mm-hmm.
equally, if it's digital and there is no physical media, if someone accidentally clicks delete, it's gone.
Yeah.
So there's good and bad on both
Mm-hmm.
sides. And I really like having digital media now for
Mm-hmm.
myself for games I'm playing. But I also really like having my childhood objects. And I think
Right.
for me, I feel like I've slightly got the best of both worlds.
Mm-hmm.
I can have my childhood games on their cartridges
Mm-hmm.
and go through the instruction booklets, find the little post-it notes I left myself with, you know, you always go left here, go right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's literally post-it notes in my games that say stuff like that, which is still helpful now because I
Mm-hmm.
still do the same mistakes. and I have those, but equally nowadays with all the games I've got and, you know, the Steam sales we were talking about, I like the fact that loads of my current games are all just downloaded on my computer and they're in the cloud and stuff. So I feel like it's almost an argument that isn't for us. It's more like it's an argument for the generation coming up now who only have the digital media, because it's going to be them that kind of experiences the difference more than we do. We're kind of sat on that sweet spot of both things. But yeah, I still, if something is like a really nice indie game and is really unique, like I do still want a physical copy of it.
Me too. Yeah.
Like I still do. So, and I think collector's editions as well. Like I hope that we still continue to get collector's editions that do have physical copies of the games in, so that we can still have both. But it just isn't really feasible with the quantity of games that are consumed for everything to be physical media now. So I'm hoping we'll find a happy medium of collector's editions and digital content, because also digital content allows the widest amount of people to play it.
That's
so
true.
Yeah, it's a very complicated question, so I'm going to stop talking there, or you'll still be talking to me in 4 hours time.
Oh yeah, I mean, we could do a whole podcast about that one topic alone. I mean, there's so many nuances to it, and it's a great thing to talk about. And like you said, there are a lot of pros and cons to both sides. And you know, I think there's always going to be a market for physical media, even years and years into the future. I think there will always be a market. That market might get smaller and smaller and more niche, but I think it's always going to be there. And I'm really glad to see companies like Limited Run Games and Super Rare Games and companies like that that are still publishing these indie games physically, because that's one thing that I worry about is with indie games, really amazing indie games that only get released digitally, and then, you know, you never know what might happen. You know, the games may disappear. And then all of a sudden, you know, that the art of that game itself is gone. But, you know, I mean, it's kind of, this is kind of controversial to say, but I'm almost kind of glad that game pirates exist in a way, because by them pirating games, even though you shouldn't pirate games, I'm trying to really say this delicately, but the people that do pirate games, in a way, they're kind of helping to keep those games alive if something were to ever happen to the original source code of the game, or, you know what I mean, or just the game disappears off of a marketplace. So even
I think there's a big difference between, you know, people straight up pirating modern games to avoid paying the people that work so hard on them, versus people saying, I've got this copy of this, you know, big box PC game from Windows 95 and I've patched it to work on a modern system and opened a server for it. You know, it's like I was saying with the anime VHS tapes. If people hadn't uploaded those to YouTube, those would not exist. The tapes have worn out because physical media degrades.
It does.
So there is a big difference, I think, between wanting to save something from disappearing versus someone saying, I've, you know, hacked the latest copy of the latest thing to try and avoid paying for the hard work that went into it. People who are playing like emulators and ROMs of Spectrum games are not taking away from the markets. You know, that you can't buy a lot of those games anymore, and a lot of them, they wouldn't work. They're on cassettes. So I think it's another thing that's become a more nuanced argument, I think, because I think it gets wrapped up in the same kind of areas as pirating of films, pirating of software, pirating of music and things like that. Whereas with some of these things, it is closer, and some of the people doing it are doing it for preservation purposes. No one's like making ROM compilations of Atari games from the late 70s, early 80s, thinking they're going to make their fortune off it. Some don't charge to share them with you. And it's a very gray kind of area, but if they weren't there, you're right, some things would get lost. So I kind of have to say, like with all arguments, that one's very nuanced, and it comes down to what they're doing with it, why they're doing it, and if they're charging for it.
That is very true. Those are all really fantastic points. And like I said, I feel like we could talk about this one topic for an entire podcast. So yeah, we'll go ahead and move on from that one. Even though, I mean, it is a topic I'm very passionate about. It sounds like you are as well. And it's a really fascinating topic to talk about. But I do have, so I've got one more question for you. And this one,
Yeah.
you may not be expecting this one. Okay.
Oh, okay. Careful.
So I don't know where I read it or where I saw it. I might have heard you say something in one of your videos or saw it on Twitter, but
Okay.
and I could, and if I'm completely wrong about this, feel free to correct me. But I could have swore I saw somewhere where you said you've never eaten meat in your life.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's very interesting. So okay, so do you mind talking about that? I mean, is that an okay thing to talk about?
Yeah, that's
I'm
fine.
just
It is
curious
a
about it.
curveball question. I award you for being able to throw me. That's an unusual one. Yeah, I'm vegetarian. My family's vegetarian. It's not that complicated, really, as an answer. But yeah, no, I think there are entire countries in the world where it's quite normal to be
Oh yeah,
vegetarian. So I've never really seen it as that much of a shocking one. I
yeah.
think people are normally more surprised that I don't drink tea, being that I'm British. That's the normal
Right.
one I get.
Yeah.
I don't drink tea or beer, or in fact alcohol at all,
Mhm.
which generally confuses people. But yeah, no, I was raised vegetarian. I was always given the choice. It was always 100%. You know, I was asked, do I want to try this? Do I want to eat this? It was not, you know, in any way forced upon. And I agreed from a very young age with the thought behind it and carried on in that direction.
Yeah, and the reason I'm fascinated by this and that I wanted to ask
Yeah.
you about it is because that's something that I've considered at a couple of times in my life. I've considered trying to go the vegetarian route. I haven't taken that step yet, but it's definitely something I'm interested in because I've seen a lot of, you know, firsthand accounts of people that have eliminated meat from their diet and have gotten a lot healthier, had more energy. So, you know, it's kind of a topic I'm a little fascinated with. But I guess if you don't have a lot of experience eating meat, you probably don't really have a point of reference as to how one diet makes you feel versus the other.
Yeah, pretty much. I've almost exactly zero reference to the alternative, but I mean, I'm healthy, and but I mean, I think one of the things you see is that I see it a lot with people that become vegetarian later in life, is that they just remove meat or whatever it is they want to remove from their diet and don't replace it with anything, or they replace it with meat replacements, which are usually foodstuff replacements.
Yeah.
So vegetarian sausages aren't necessarily as high protein as sausages. They aren't a one-to-one replacement. They're more like a taste substitute. And because I never ate meat, I never ate the meat replacements, because to me the meat replacements were weird. I didn't have a frame of reference for what the thing they were replacing was. So they just tasted strange to me. So I guess just it's more a case of learning enough about nutrition to be replacing one food group with an equal nutritional food group, not something that tastes like the thing you've cut out. But I mean, my energy levels are usually pretty high. I don't have too much sugar. I don't have meat or fish or dairy or caffeine in any way either. And I seem to be high energy according to everyone. So it's definitely possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I've been trying to make some positive changes in my life when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like I have eliminated caffeine. Um, every now and then I might have a cup of tea that has some caffeine in it, but for the most part, I don't drink any caffeine because I found that it was affecting my sleep quite a bit. And I'm trying to improve my sleep. But yeah, I don't know. I've just always been interested in the vegetarian, you know, trying to do the vegetarian diet. And not necessarily the meat replacement stuff like you mentioned. I've actually tried some of that stuff, and some of it is okay as far as how it tastes, but I would rather eat real fruits and vegetables and other things that you need to eat to replace the nutrients that you can get from meat and the protein and stuff like that.
It's just understanding what
Yeah.
suits you, really. And I think a lot of taste and a lot of things you eat, you kind of acquire tastes. I don't believe that anyone just likes the taste of coffee the first time they try it.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's a very overwhelming thing. I don't like it at all, and I had no desire to learn to like it. But I think a lot of things is just about retraining your taste buds and your diet, because of course as soon as you start to cut down sugar, your brain goes just absolutely berserk at you. It is very unhappy because you're in a cycle of feeding the sugar cravings and so forth, like with anything. So it's just a case of finding a balance that suits you and what works for you, knowing nutritionally what's important to you, and just monitoring yourself. I've known people who were vegan, and although they were following all guidelines and they were eating enough protein, they were still taking things like vitamin B12 supplements, because you can't get that from your standard kind of vegan diet, that it just didn't suit their bodies. It didn't work for them. So they introduced some things back in and found a balance that way. And equally for me, it's like I like eating crisps and pizza and stuff, but it doesn't make me feel good if I do that a lot of the time. I'm annoyingly much happier on a stupidly healthy diet. So it's just a case of finding that balance and finding what gives you enough energy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I may try it one day. I think that if I try it, I'm gonna have to make it a slow transition. You know what I mean? Take it in steps, and not just try to do it all at once.
No, we don't want to shock your system, because it's not gonna. If you suddenly take away the entire way it's used to getting your nutrients, it's not going to reward you. It's going to think something terrible's happened in the world, and the food stocks have been taken away. Like our bodies react to stuff in a very sensible kind of way, which is why things like crash diets don't tend to work for most people. It's because it just puts your body on high alert, because the food's not supposed to stop. So it's just do things slowly, find a balance, and find other things you enjoy eating. Starting to make your own stuff is always a good thing, I've found. Learning to make stuff for yourself can be fun as well. Changing up ingredients that way. When I was told I couldn't eat certain things due to allergies, I suddenly learned how to do lots of baking. And then technically my baking and treats were all pretty healthy, which meant I could just live off them for a lot of the time. So that made me happy.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, that's all very inspiring. You're making me kind of want to try it. So I need to do some more research and learn the proper way to do it. Because I mean, I've always ate a lot of meat all my life. You know, it's just kind of the way I was raised. And you know, I love animals. So like, whenever I see some of these documentaries about where the meat comes from that I'm eating, it's kind of mortifying.
Well, you can always look into sourcing your food from different places. Because there's different ways of doing those things. More humane. So for me, that was the main kind of driver as well. It wasn't that I was against eating the thing. I was just like, there isn't a way to easily kind of get that in a way I'm okay with. So it made sense to carry on kind of as I was. Plus I just because from a young age I'd been so kind of like, being vegetarian's a good thing. By the time you're like an adult, you're kind of like, this doesn't look like food to me. Like I have no frame of reference. It's just strange. And the only kind of interaction I'd ever had with meat as a kid was like feeding pets. So I guess to me some of the meat stuff sort of was more similar to cat food than it was to human food, which is not appetizing.
No, I get it. That makes sense.
So at that point I was like, do I really want to eat this? It doesn't really look like food for me. So just carried on as I was.
Very cool. So one random thing I want to tell you that you might find funny before we close out the podcast, and this is going to kind of make me look like an idiot, but that's okay.
I look like an idiot for a living. Don't worry, mate.
I just recently discovered that what you guys call crisps are what we call chips, potato chips. Also, it goes even further. I recently discovered that what y'all call biscuits are what we call cookies. I didn't know that. So I learned something new in the last several months.
The biscuit cookie thing is more nuanced.
Oh yeah.
You see, because all cookies are biscuits, but not all biscuits are cookies.
Exactly. Yep. And
cookie is a subset of biscuits. You know, we're British. We have tea and biscuits. We take it very seriously. But cookies are just a subset of the biscuit genre in this
Mm-hmm.
country because we have so many.
Yeah, and yeah, that's cool. And how I discovered this is my one of my buddies that lives out there, we decided to do this thing where I send him a box of snacks you can only get
Yeah.
in the US, and he sends me a box of snacks you can only get in the UK. And so that's how I kind of discovered a lot of this stuff, because he was like, "What kind of biscuits you want?" And I was like, Biscuits?" I was like, "What do you mean?" So he had to explain it to me. So learn something new.
Yeah. It's always fun seeing how language kind of
Hmm.
changes, because obviously American English is derived from English
Yeah, right.
English, but also English English isn't the same as when
Hmm.
that split happened.
Hmm.
And it's always fun to see how the words have
Hmm.
changed and differed, because like pants is obviously the most fun one, because like we call them trousers, and
Hmm.
what you call pants is our underwear. So
Yeah.
there was a lot of times as a kid where you'd be watching American comedies and they'd be constantly like going, "Oh no, I have got no pants on," and we're just sitting there going because it means something very
Yeah.
different in
Yeah.
the UK. So that's another one. But then in some ways the American one is correct, because
Hmm.
pantaloons meant trousers,
Pantaloons.
and
Yeah.
then it was underpants was
Hmm.
so, but why is it different? But
Yeah.
it makes things funny, so
Yeah. It does.
it's always good to go through those kind of
Hmm.
things.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Yeah,
really.
then you tell a British person that you like make tea in the microwave, and
Hmm.
then like, you know, you're at serious risk of an international
Yeah.
incident.
Hey, I'm proud to say that I make tea with a kettle. I'm proud to say that. So,
Yeah,
uh,
it's because you guys have a different
mhm.
sort of wattage and ampage to us. So
Yeah.
here the kettle is much quicker than any
Hmm.
other method.
Yeah.
Um, and that's kind of what that difference is. But the
Yeah.
one that some Americans don't know, which I always find funny
Hmm.
to tell my American friends, is it is in no way an urban legend, and it's completely utterly correct that on primetime television hours,
Hmm.
in the advert breaks of whatever the main show that we're watching
Hmm.
in the UK is, especially in the past when we only had like 4 or 5 TV channels, they literally pump extra electricity into our national grid to
Really?
cope with the kettles, because
Really?
everyone makes a cup of tea
Yeah.
on the ad break.
Wow. I didn't know that.
It's actually correct.
That's
Because
that's
otherwise
interesting.
everybody's essential cup of tea
Hmm.
during primetime telly in the evening would
Hmm.
be potentially pushing our grid.
Wow. I
Told you,
didn't.
the British people take their tea seriously.
Hmm.
It's why they don't trust me, because I don't drink it.
Oh, that's awesome. So, is there anything before we end the podcast? Is there anything else you want to say, or anything else you want to promote, or anything like that?
Um, no, I think I've taken up a vast amount of your time, really.
No,
Obviously,
it's
if
been great.
anyone does want to come and hang out with me,
Hmm.
we can talk about the difference between cookies and biscuits some more, if people wish. Then I'm Trista Bytes on everything, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram,
Hmm.
all of that. And yeah, all the items behind me are a good indication of the sorts of things we talk about, and it would be lovely to see you there.
Yep, and that's Bytes, Bytes. And again, I'll
Because
throw
I
the
thought I was funny.
right. I'll throw the links for everything in the description down below. So again, I
Thank you.
highly encourage everybody to check her stuff out, her content out, because not only are her YouTube channel is great, but her Twitch streams are very entertaining. She's very high energy. She will make you laugh. I guarantee you, she will make you laugh. And
Intentionally or unintentionally, I just can't help it.
and yeah, so it's been awesome talking to you and having you on the podcast. I appreciate you taking some time out of your evening to join the podcast, and it's been a great opportunity for people in my audience to get to know you and hopefully come over to your content and check it out.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been lovely to chat to you.
Yep, no problem at all. And as always, everybody, stay safe out there, keep playing games, having a good time, and I'll see you all in the next one.